name is Lloyd Beaudreaux. I've been raised in Plaquemine Parish. I've roughnecked the biggest part of my adult life. And I know everything just about what's going on. I hadn't worked way offshore out there, but I know what goes on. I work inshore and offshore, but not in the deep water. But all the time that you going in a hole with casing, you fill it up with your drilling mud. And then when there's a plug, when they start off, there's a plug on the bottom that Halliburton puts on there, and stuff will go out, but it won't come back in that pipe. And apparently they were drilling a 9 5/8 hole, and they're running 7-inch casing in there. And you don't have much room on the side of that casing to hold that weight down, you see. And they displaced it when they were going in the hole. They put salt water in that pipe. When Halliburton started pumping their cement in, they started pumping the cement in. Then they had to put water on top of it, but they put a plug on top of their cement to shove their cement down. And it's salt water that was going in, and salt water coming up on the outside of the casing. And then it didn't have enough weight. Fresh water weighs 8.6. I think salt water weighs 9.2 or 9.4. And the drilling mud that they had probably was 16 to 18 pounds per gallon.
Yeah, they say 17.5 is what the guy
Okay, 17.5. And the deeper you go, and you know when you're drilling into something, you keep your mud weight to hold it down there. They was displacing the mud with salt water, and that's what caused the problem. The well is blowing out on the outside of the casing. It's not through the casing, because they had cemented that, and jumping in a hurry, they're jumping through the ass. I'm gonna say it. The thing is not coming through the casing. It's going on the outside of the casing. That's where the oil's coming out. And that's why they can't shut it down. They got a bell nipple on top of their preventers, and it's a 20-inch piece of pipe. And that's where they're putting everything so they could catch the casing and all, you see.
Yes.
And I worked in the oil field about 15, 20 years. And I was working back at Cameron on a land job, and we had blowout. We had several blowouts. But we drilled into stuff, and we knew we were drilling into it, and we had our weight built up, but it didn't do no good. It blew out. It was on a land job, and it cradled in on us. It blew out all night long. It blew the pipe out of the derrick, break a piece off, and another one would go either way. And then it started shoving everything out. It cut the drill line, dropped the block. And then it started shoving, when it got all the pipe out, it started shoving pieces of rock the size of the casing through the casing, and we didn't have no sparks or nothing. Then at 6 o'clock, around 6 o'clock next morning, around daylight, the derrick started doing this, and it went down and it cradled in, and it sealed itself off. They lost everything on it but a few little trailers around the outside of it.
I see.
We stayed there and watched it all night long. And they had like the same problem, but they were on their casing already. We didn't have our casing. They had their casing in there with the plug on the bottom, and then a joint on top of that plug. There's another deal that Halliburton puts on. When they pump the cement through it, there was this plug they put in to shove the cement down. It sets in that first plug, and that's as far as it goes. The driller works himself up to that job, and he's the one that runs the rig. There's a rig tool pusher that over everything on a rig, except for your engineers and stuff. And the engineer was Russian. That the salt water wasn't heavy enough to keep the weight of it down, and it can't be coming up that casing, because they got a plug on the bottom. It's got to be coming on the outside of the casing. And they're not saying none of that, you see. It's not through the casing, it comes from the outside of the casing. And you see, they're scared to plug it up because might do just like that land job we did. We lost the rig.
Lost the rig, right?
It cracked all over around it and cradled in.
Tipped over, cradled in.
This may not do it at the depth. They were at 18,000. We was around 16, 17,000 when this happened to us.
I see.
And it was a gas well, and it just cradled in, and they were trying to tap into it to get the gas out of it. They had a rig maybe a quarter of a mile from where we was at. You could, when you get in the derrick, you could see it where they had lost the rig there too. And the next morning, that's the way our rig looked. The laws have changed so much since I've been in oil field. I'm 70 years old right now, and I spent my youngest part of my adult life on the rigs.
I see.
I worked for a bunch of different companies that's not existing anymore. Fortico, Meekum, Penrod, and all. I keep on all evening. I worked for a bunch of them. Had a boat taking on the mud. They can't pump it overboard, so they put it on the boat.
Oh yeah.
And as they were putting that salt water in, the mud was coming out of the bell nipple and going into the mud tanks, into the floor, going to the tanks, and they were pumping it out of their tanks onto a boat. It was, like I say, the man had to get off of the location. They had another rig coming over there that was going to be a completion rig. They had done drilled a well, and all they were doing, as soon as they got the cement and the cement got hard, they'd have moved off the location. But when they were pumping the salt water down, cement down, they had salt water in the casing. So this casing, they come out of the outside of the casing, and you're drilling a 9 5/8 hole, and then when you're putting a 7-inch casing in, you maybe got an inch all the way around it. And there's not enough weight there. Even the mud might not have been enough. It should be. It been holding it down, but it was holding the whole thing down. You see, it had a lot of weight on top of it.
I see.
Yeah, on the outside of the casing. You see, when he started putting that salt water in it, that's what caused it. He was ordered probably to get off of that location. The rig was costing them $1 million something a day, what they said on the news, and then they probably had another rig waiting to come on that location. It was probably costing them something there too. You see, and somebody was on him to get it. You see.
Right. It's like that massive
like
energy.
the expression in the oil field: assholes and elbows. Let's go. They said that's the expression on the oil field. If you can't get it, you can't stay. There's somebody eating crackers and onions and crying for your job. It might have not been the engineer's fault, or the company pusher, BP's pusher. There was somebody pushing him, you see.
Yeah.
And that could have been. I'm just saying could have.
Could have. Nobody knows for sure because
because I wasn't out there, but from my experience on the rigs and all, we always had a company engineer on the rig. We had the rig pusher that runs the crews, the roustabout crews, everybody on the rig. He has 2 crews that he run on that. They work 12 hours a day. And one day crew and one night crew. Most of them offshore works from midnight to noon, from noon to midnight. And the rig pusher is there to assist the driller to what he's doing or tell him what to do. The company man tells the pusher what to do. They say the boat got fired off of the job, and then when the company man says that, well, I told him if he didn't do what I told him to do, I was gonna run him off. So they run the boat off, and when the owner of the boat seen it, they run him off. You see, the skipper.
I see.
The skipper of the boat, or the captain of the boat, which you probably won't call it. We call them skippers around here. They pump mud in it. I don't know what size volume that they had going in it, but if they didn't have the big enough flow of it, it's gonna blow it right out. They could put something on top of it, or what they're planning on doing, they could cut some of the flow down. They haven't cut it down yet. They're working through that casing on that 20-inch pipe, you see, that bell nipple. We got somebody coming aboard here right now.
Okay. Do you want to wind up?
Yeah, just shut it down. I don't think they can cap it. They're afraid maybe around the bottom it may crack somewhere else around the location, and they can't stop it then, you see. They can slow it. If they do what they're doing now, put a bigger deal on it and flow all of it into a ship, that'll be fine, you see. And they could do that for years if they want to do it. But as soon as they get them relief welds in there, if they hit it, they got to drill through that casing and or either on the outside of it and pump mud into it, you see, from the bottom. They can't pump mud at 13,000 feet. It ain't enough weight on it. It shoves it back out, you see,
I see.
what they had tried to do. And it might work on papers and stuff, but it ain't gonna work in that gushing oil and stuff.
In reality.
They're not saying what the pressure is on it. I wouldn't know what kind of pressure. It's got quite a bit of pressure. But just there's 5,000 feet under the water, and you can't tell how much pressure it's got, you see.
I
But
understand.
it's shoving a pretty good ways when it was. They don't show us no more new pictures of how much coming out of the water after it hits the water. You know,
Right.
after it hits the surface, how high is it blowing out? It shows that it's blowing more out than what they say it is, you see. And they're starting to clamp down on them. Coast Guard put them 48